So here's the question for the night, Joey. Forget what it is, but if a business, if a workplace, if a group of people who have a common objective, let's say it's a ministry of the crown, is not performing as well as a new government would want them to, making that group of people smaller by 10%, having 10% fewer people in that department, how is that going to make the outcome better? If we're already having queues and we're already having hold-ups and we're already having communication delays with these departments, stripping a bunch of people out of those departments, how is that going to make the department operate better? I know it's not the same thing, but imagine those people who are building the roads in Dunedin at the moment, and there's 40 guys working on the road, and the council goes, we're not happy with how this is going, so they get rid of 10 of them, and now there's 30 guys working on the road, and they want a better and different outcome. I don't quite get it. Do you have any ideas before we even get into it, Chewy? Because that's the thing that I'm completely confused by. Other than I do understand the political value in it, but the practical value in it, I'm confused by.
Well, I think this government has been bold and decisive and clearly identified where the fat in the system is, the useless, space-taking up payroll sponges that don't add anything to the public service. It's just very funny to me that it all seems to be around free school lunches.
Yep, it's kids, man.
Māori and Pacific Island programs. Vulnerable children, or that's where the real fat in the public sector lies. And
I can hear the sarcasm. I can see the tongue in your cheek and the sarcasm, but let's just actually bounce off what you've said, getting rid of the fat, getting rid of the useless, So if you're getting rid of the useless people, how is that going to make the product any better? So that means that the useless people who are only pulling their weight 20%, if you get rid of all of them, that's still a bunch of weight that now needs to be picked up by fewer people. It's like, I don't know why anyone's buying this. I don't know why the media is not pushing back more against this. It seems very clear to me, if 50 people aren't enough to do a job well, 40 people don't seem to have the capacity to do it better. It makes no logical sense.
Just playing and it's just playing into this perception that it's like the 1980s again, and there's just public service, there's just shuffling paper, and taking a paycheck. And I don't think that there's any argument that because of COVID, there was a huge amount, especially in and around health for obvious reasons. There was a huge intake of people into that public service. Part of that was because there was a big unprecedented job to get done. Part of it was a way of keeping people employed and that sort of thing. And there was always going to be a natural downturn from there. But I think this whole thing of just turning around and going, well, we need 10 to 20% cuts out of your department, fucking start picking names, and people going, well, sweet. It's an enormous amount of people that are now out on their ear.
Yeah.
And there'll be people with quite specialized knowledge.
Yeah.
And I just, as I was saying there with deep sarcasm, it's the programs that have been affected that I think is really telling for me. Like, we've been talking all year about how any sort of redress or consideration for vulnerable people is out on the air because we're all about equality, right? And equality isn't equity. It's just everybody is treated exactly the same, whether it is helpful or not.
Yeah.
And it's not down to the outcomes. It's not down to research. It's not down to fact. It is down to we stoked a perception of what the government is, and now we have to follow through, and it's just vibes, not facts, yet again.
It's just frustrating me because, as a kind of a commentator, as sort of a talkback, someone who facilitates conversations, I can start to say things like, the left versus the right when it comes to public servants. What they do is the right come in and they say, oh, there's too many public servants, let's get rid of them. And then the left come in and say, oh, there's not enough public servants, let's get more of them. And on some level, you kind of go, who's telling the truth? You don't know. But what I would now say, because this was a bit of pushback from some lunatics on Twitter today about the 7 social media positions that National has. Oh, did you know that Jacinda had 26 communication staff? And I'm like, yeah. Did you remember that thing called the pandemic? Do you remember why they needed more communication staff to convey what needed to get out? So what I'm saying is, when I start to think about why the left builds, public servants, I can see a reason for that. No one yet seems to have asked this right-wing government, why do you see a need to reduce numbers? Show us your workings. Other than a financial outlay, you haven't actually explained how or why this ministry will work better with a 6.5% reduction, because surely that's what we want. We want the best bang for our buck. We want these ministries and these departments working as best they can. I've heard no one on the right say, this will work better because XYZ with the loss of 6.5% of the staff. All I heard last night from old Rimmer was him basically saying about school lunches, yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine with fewer people. That's about the sum total of the analysis they've given. And I haven't heard anyone who has access, which is not us, actually go, can you explain to me why this will now operate better and be better for the voters with 500 people less at Kāinga Ora or whatever the one is? And no one's asked that question. That's the only question that matters. Because you know what? If Labour has got too much fat there and it would actually operate better with fewer people, I'm okay with that. But it seems to me that Labour will tell you why we need more, but we never get National telling us why there should be fewer, other than budgets. And that's all they ever say. And remember, for this term, it's always budgets. Oh, and by the way, here's $3 billion landlords. That's always got to come out in this as well. Anyhow, should we actually go to the story now, Chewy, that we've done a 14-minute introduction to the story?
Do we even need to now? Yeah,
we probably almost don't. Oranga Tamariki Ministry for Children and the Ministry of Education facing cuts. Ironic today that they seem to get out their shares to a couple of places that are going to impact the young people of New Zealand, and also, maybe this is me being a bit facetious, not impact any voters. Maybe impact the parents, the voters who have parents, but no actually direct impact on voters per se. Let us have a squiz.
Brutal, chaotic and dangerous. That's one characterisation of today's public sector job cuts as the axe fell on more than 1,000 roles. 565 are at the Ministry of Education, the rest at Oranga Tamariki. The government insists savings will be spent on frontline services. Here's Kushla Norman.
Jubilation and hope swept through Wellington today, but it was brief. As students marked their graduation on Lambton Quay on the terrace, hundreds of public servants found out they're losing their jobs.
These cuts are brutal, they're chaotic and they're dangerous. They will impact on thousands of public servants whose lives have been put into turmoil.
At the Education Ministry, 565 roles could go, including 225 vacancies. The PSA says the cuts will hit areas including the newly established Curriculum Centre, half the team behind the school lunches program and regional support staff.
So there's an example. Let's just talk about school lunches. Rimmer's got a bee in his bonnet about school lunches and how it should operate and how it should work better. How is that going to work better with half the number of staff who are currently running it than running it? Like, I know that's the smallest number of those three, but that's a very tangible thing that's been talked about for the past several weeks. Now you would have had 30, you've now got 14 running it. How do they expect a better outcome with half the number of people running that office than were running it previously? And remember, running it to a point where experts were saying this should be rolled out into more schools, not this is a waste of money, it should be in fewer schools. Do you want to say anything, Chewy, or should I push play?
Yeah, I do. This is working as intended. They want to make sure that this program fails. They want to make it inefficient.
Yeah.
This isn't a bunch of people sitting in a back room shuffling papers. This is staff scattered throughout the country, making sure that the program is nutritious, making sure that there isn't waste, making sure that schools are supported running it, making sure it runs well. If they're cutting those jobs, the people actually out there, literally on the front line and making this program work, then they want to break the program and then turn around and go, it's not generating good outcomes.
Yeah.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's engineered.
And this is what we've been saying now for weeks, you know, the right, and I know some of you will be sick of it, but we're going to keep banging on a few of these things. The right constantly says government is broken. Then they get in, pass policies like this, which are going to break government. Then they step back and go, see, we told you it was always broken, as they've broken it. So that's clear. And you're right, Joey. This is exactly what that is. It does make me think as well, you know, with the Suicide Prevention Office, how there were some questions asked when that came out. I wonder if the CEO of that area in government was going a bit scorched earth. I wonder if the CEO is going, okay, so it's up to us, is it? All right, then let's tell the government we're getting rid of this office and see what happens. And I wonder what's going to happen with some of these positions. Like, all we're hearing is back office, back room. Like, we still haven't had that identified who and what that is. Like, what job is a back room job? And remember, the back room feeds the front line. You don't have the back room, then people from the front line have to then take on some of the responsibilities of the back room, making them less likely to be available for the front line.
To use that analogy, the front line versus the back office, right? The front line, that's a military term. They always say the tail to the teeth is 3 times the size. So to support a unit, a soldier in the field, there's like 9 people dedicated to supporting that one guy, making sure that he gets everything he needs, he's told where he needs to go, all of this sort of stuff. If you just have frontline, it's a guy in a hole trying to win the war. It doesn't work.
Interesting. Really, really interesting analogy, Chewy. All right.
And those are the people that schools call every single day.
Exactly.
Those are the people that principals ring up for advice, for contact, for support with learning needs, student outcomes, all of these things. So it's really disappointing to see those cuts taking place.
We will be opposing every job cut. We know that they will have a devastating impact on children and young people for generations to come.
The Education Secretary, Iona Holstead, says that's a mischaracterization, adding in a statement, the PSA's comments generate unnecessary concern for parents. The government says money saved from today's education and oranga tamariki cuts will go to the front line.
You can be confident that as we go through the budget, there'll be an increase in support and resources and funding for oranga tamariki and education.
Since 2018, staff numbers at the Education Ministry have grown by nearly 50%.
Why? So this is the part again that we're missing. Why? Why is it growing? Because maybe it's needed to grow. Maybe it hasn't. We don't know. But no one's asking why has it grown? Because this is what I'm asking of National. Why are you shrinking? I don't care about bottom dollar can't afford, because we can afford. You're just choosing to put money elsewhere. Why is it growing? Why did it grow? For good reasons, for bad reasons, for neutral reasons? And why are we cutting it? They're the questions that we're not answering. No one's getting asked to be answered.
Over the same period at Oranga Tamariki, levels increased by a fifth. The agency responsible for vulnerable children plans to axe 9% of its staff, 447 roles.
You can't take a whole middle layer of an organisation away and say that the frontline's going to carry on at producing really high quality work. That's never going to happen.
Oranga Tamariki says it wants to transform rather than tinker, putting children at the centre. But advocates say young people are the ones being overlooked. Kushla Norman, One News.
There you go. There's the first story for tonight, Chewy.
Sam,
I keep asking myself as well. It's this question of why. And I want to know. I want to know why. Why do we need to reduce numbers? And I don't and I won't accept because we can't afford it. Because we can afford it. You're just choosing to allocate the money elsewhere. Right? We can afford it. And if the reason is only because we can't afford it, then you cannot deny you're making these cuts so you can give landlords $3 billion. Because if that's the only rationale that you can come back to because we can't afford it, that's a financial decision you've made to give more money in another area. So please, someone who has access, I have emailed Rimmer several times since we told him why he was racist. He has never wanted to come back on again. Brooke Van Velden never wanted to come back on. Winston hasn't wanted. They won't give us access, and actually, I'm okay with that. We don't deserve anyone's time. They don't have to do it, right? But people with access, ask them why. Why is there a reduction in numbers? And do not accept, because we can't afford it. So we can. It's a financial choice you're making. Chewy?
There's enough money in the kitty for them to do a study on a dream tunnel, 4-kilometre tunnel under Wellington. There's enough money for that. That's the sort of project that you go, oh shit, we haven't spent our budget. Maybe we'll have a look at this. That's
end of the financial year. You got to get all that money out so we don't get attacked. End of the financial year kind of thing.
Yeah, that's one of those things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've said this a couple of times, and governments come at this sometimes backwards. And it should be like, what do our schools need? What does our health department need? How much money do we need to feed kids? Yeah. Work out your budget and then work out how to fund it. But they've come the other way around. Oh, we want to deliver tax relief.
Yeah, you're right.
I love that term. Cuts. We want to deliver cuts. Tax cuts and job cuts. And they're coming at it from that. And then to go, oh, there's not enough money. The fuck it is. You're giving it away. I want to see that money invested into our communities. I want to see that money invested into people that don't have a great time of things. I want to see this money literally poured into the youth of this country. I don't care. Like, there shouldn't be a question of like, oh, the Ministry of Education is overfunded. No such word. Don't recognize that statement at all. Like, I want to see every school with a lunch program. Every school. Like, it's not a question of Seymour's like, oh, we've got to target it at the most needy. We've got to really single out those people that are too poor and the ones with shit parents. Just roll out a food program. Other developed countries have it. It's not about poverty. It's about the kids are at school all day. Why don't we just feed them?
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing that should be, like, we're talking about suicide prevention. We're talking about the disabled. We're talking about all of these programs that hopefully can go some way into redressing the inequality in our society. And they're shit canning all of it. It doesn't matter how many reports and pieces of paper that you hold up and you go, well, actually, here are the benefits of this program that you might not have considered. They go, don't care. Yeah. Don't care. Not even going to read it. File it in the bin.
Yeah. Doesn't suit our narrative, so let's get rid of it. Mm. I think the going back to the Suicide Prevention Office, which obviously has been kept in, but just remember this. This is why maybe the CEO of the department that said that was going to be cancelled had a pretty straight face with that poker hand he played, because he or she had played, because the government continually tells us they're not going to step in. Oh, that's for the CEOs. Oh, that's for the Ministry of Health. Oh, that's for the Ministry of Education to decide. And then as soon as one of those departments makes a decision that's politically toxic, all of a sudden, like the Suicide Prevention Office, all of a sudden the government gets involved, puts their sticky little fingers onto it, and starts talking about, well, we'll make sure this stays. Like, hang on, you can't have it both ways. You can't absolve yourself of any responsibility of that's for the ministry to sort out. And then when they sort something out you don't like, all of a sudden you're in there fixing it up to keep the public exposure being positive rather than negative. So like today, Chewy, I put a tweet out a wee while ago about when I saw the inflation number has come down to 4% from 4.7. And I said, government, if you're going to take credit for the 4% inflation today, then you have to take responsibility for any of those negative stats in the economy today. Because either that 4% inflation is because of the downward trend that was under the last government and it's continued, right? Or it's all to do with national. Those ram raids that were a downward trend in the last government and continued on are the ones that are happening today. You have to stop this conversation, Mr. Luxon. We've inherited our XYZ, or because we've inherited whatever the department he wants to kind of push away from. whilst he says, but the inflation numbers down, they're all us. They're all on us. But all that other stuff that's kind of carried through, that's all on them. You can't have it both ways. It's all or nothing. You either take all the responsibility, which means, or take all the praise, which means you have the responsibility, or you say, well, this, to be fair, this is only the first quarter since the last government was in. They're probably, you'll see our ones probably kicking in the next 6 months. And then you can say over the negative stuff, yeah, look, it'll be the next 6 months. You can probably measure it against us. But I mean, I know I'm almost being slightly facetious because no one ever does that. But it's important to point out that if they're going to claim the positives, they also have to own the negatives, Chewy.
Yeah. I wondered what the downstream effects are. So there's been a culling of people in departments today. And generally they are smart, educated, motivated, and driven people. Like, what are they going to do? Are they going to pack up their stuff, sell their house, take their family overseas? Are we going to see a massive brain drain of those people in the next 6 months? You know, I don't think, like I've said it before, National are not long-term thinkers. ACT are not long-term thinkers.
Yeah.
New Zealand First are not long-term thinkers. And if we lose these people to Australia or Canada or the UK or wherever, you know, how do we get those people back? We're not.
Well,
I would love to see some like the stats you highlighted at the start. I 100% agree. You can't just sit there and go, oh, this department increased by 43% for some fucking unknown reason. Give context to the numbers. Yeah. That's what we need. Both the politicians to do that, but we also need the media to do that. Numbers with no context, they're divorced of all meaning. Oh, big number go up, big number bad.
As you're talking about it, I just talking about don't want to lose these people. We've talked about this once before. I go back to the Sky. Is it the Skyhawks? Is that the name of the plane? The Skyhawks getting mothballed. And what happened then was we lost all of our pilots. They either went to other air forces or they joined the private sector. But then if you wanted to bring something back, there's no one to fly them. You know, there's no one left to do that work because you've got rid of it. If any government does this sort of thing, you know, and gets rid of a whole bunch of talent and they go off and do other things, then when you want to build up that talent again, there's no one there to do it. So it's actually, I think through this counselling session, Chewy, that we call BHN, I think what we've done is we've also now acknowledged, tell us why. Show us your workings, Mr. Luxon. Why and how will the Ministry of Education function better with 500-ish jobs going? Why and how? All right.
I also want to. I do want to highlight something that just saw come across my feed from a very good friend of mine on Facebook.
For sure.
She's worked in public service before. She's an excellent writer. Definitely hunt out her blog called The End is Nai. But she posted this. Who are these backroom people that are surplus to requirements? The lawyers who set and train the urgent process to uplift a child at risk of being injured or killed. The evidence people who actually track whether kids' lives are getting better. The administrators that keep tabs on the kids, where they are, what services they're getting, so kids that have already fallen through the cracks don't fall any further. The policy people who figure out how to translate the minister's direction into laws and programs and action, no matter how batshit that direction may be. The payroll people, the cleaners, who? I'm not saying Oranga Tamariki is a well-functioning organisation or even that it's the right side, but one thing's clear. The very last consideration right now, the absolute last, is the need of the kids.
Yeah, 100%.